I was missing for 24 hours. School was just the worst for me. The anxiety also comes from like, okay, well, these are also racial
That's
stereotypes. So
right.
when you're late,
I think I read your first person account. I think it was in CBC
yep,
of being Black with ADHD,
yeah,
and it really touched my heart. And I reached out to you. I thought, gosh, I know what it's like to live as a mixed ethnicity person in Canada. There's many spaces where I don't feel like I fit, but there's
hmm,
not many spaces where I don't feel like I am welcome.
yeah,
And there's a big difference with that.
yeah.
And so I wanted you to speak to your experiences.
I'm Gavin Stephens. I'm a comedian and a writer, I guess, and a playwright. I recently found out I had ADHD, like just after the pandemic. It made sense. A lot of things make sense, but also a lot of things became complicated. So,
And I just
okay.
realized my little ADHD moment that I probably wasn't recording myself. We've been looking at you this whole time while I was
Oh,
talking, which is, to me, these are the perfect little authentic things that happen to us.
yeah.
Just like the fact that we had to reschedule today because your phone broke.
So my phone broke last week. It just bricked. So they had to like open up my phone and like completely change the entire like I guess it's the motherboard. And I felt bad. Like that's the ADHD. It's like that. I think because I've gone through a whole life of that of
Yeah,
these kind of
dumb
forgetting
things
and
happening.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I'm fine. Like I know, like part of me now knows, but I also like I showed up an hour early today. Like I was
Oh,
on at 11.
one of the things that I speak about, and I'm going to be speaking about soon, is women and ADHD. And I think these kinds of errors can often show up as being overly conscientious, which can
Yeah.
turn in like rigidity and a little bit of OCD type behavior because we have these systems
Yeah.
that keep the house of cards together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yes.
And anxiety, so much
Mhm.
anxiety.
So
Yeah.
much anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been labeled a lot of things in my life. And now I'm like, oh, that's a lot of what do you call it? When you're hyper vigilant. I'm very hyper vigilant. And I'm like I'm trying to be aware of it now. Like I'm
Yeah.
really trying to be aware of it. But yeah, I know it. Like
And
I
you're hyper
know.
vigilant to criticism,
I guess
judgment.
so. Yeah, all of that. Like just like, oh, you're this person. You get to a point where you're just like you've accepted an idea of yourself, and you're like, well, I'm not good at that, and I'm this person, and you're like, oh no, that's just I don't. I guess it's like a brain function. It's
Yes.
a yeah,
Well,
yeah,
we're trying to protect ourselves. And in
yeah,
therapy, we think of it as we're hypervigilant for evidence that we are being unseen or misunderstood or something not good. And so
yeah.
we are very sensitive to any signal of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Therapy has helped a lot with that, but it's also like I find that like we live in a system where it's like it just does not um it doesn't validate us, like it's just not built for us.
Us as ADHD folks.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
any neurodivergent person, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just kind
Yeah.
of like, yeah. I realized in the last year or so that because my interest isn't money, like it's not, I'm not driven by profit. Like I understand I need money and I understand,
Yeah.
but when I create, it's not for profit, it's to create. And so that alone puts me in a amongst my peers in a weird place. And
Your
I'm starting,
comedian peers. Yeah. Probably
yeah,
not your artist peers, because I think there's a lot of artists like that, but
yeah, I'm
probably,
sure there is,
yeah.
but I'm more with comedians. It's
Hmm.
just like,
Hmm.
yeah, and it's a very weird space. And then outside of that, family and stuff like that is like, I think they think I'm crazy in a way
For being a comedian.
for not. I think they've accepted me, but there's like a I don't prioritize like making it. You know what I mean? That it's just I because we have interest-based nervous system. So
Yeah.
I'm just not interested. I'm interested in creating. Like I learned coding, learned to build websites and programs and stuff like that. I could have made money off of it.
Hmm.
I just kind of stopped. I had a
Yes.
great time doing it and then I
Hmm.
stopped.
Because
And
it wasn't you kind of mastered it, and now
yeah,
you're on to the next thing.
exactly.
Yeah, that's
And it
that's common. I hear that a lot.
I used to have a feeling of not having value. It might be my world of comedy where people have like it's like, oh, what job are you doing next? Who are you around? And
Right.
those things don't mean anything to me. And so I understand that that's two different kinds of operating systems, I guess is the best way to put it. My brain's just different. Yeah.
Yeah, your values are different as
Yeah.
well. I'm going to pick up my fidget. I have this amazing slinky,
I got this one.
right?
Yeah.
So that helps me sit still when
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do talks like this. So
Yeah.
it's nice and quiet. And anyway, so I'm going to do that because I was realizing I was practically sitting on my hands. So it's all good. Can you tell the story? Because not everybody's going to have read your first
Okay.
person thing,
Yeah.
that airport incident, because that was the one that made me, I just like, I can't. Like you're in an airport, through
Yeah.
security, like, really? Come
Yeah.
on.
Well, it was like, so I was flying from Ottawa to Calgary, and this is years and years ago. So this is before diagnosis. The airport's very small, and I came out of security, and there's those, I guess like a convenience store. It's just those convenience stores in the airport, and nobody was manning the cashier, and the cash register has all the gum and everything. So
Yeah,
I was looking at gum for a long time, and then I
because you're
looked
kind
up
of
and
zoning out because
I
you're
was
probably
zoned out.
tired. And yeah,
It's early, and then like just whatever, and I'm traveling, so there's stress involved. These are things I didn't realize at the time. I'm just like, this is just normal behavior. And then I look up and I see a woman staring at me. She's glaring at me. So I walk over because like when you're black, you understand. You understand body language. So you go over and I'm like, I got to diffuse the situation. And I ask her where she keeps her almonds. I was on a big almond kick back then. I was looking for almonds and water. And she's like, she kind of just nodded towards the water and then went back to the cash. So I go back up, I get water, and I put a pack of gum on the counter and I pay for it. She hands me my receipt and she says, "Where's the other pack of gum?" And I'm like, I'm cluing in. It's early and I'm trying to clue into it. And then another woman shows up and she's like, can I help you?" To the other woman. Do you need help, Susan? And whatever. And I realize what's going on. And so I just kind of,
and you realize
whatever.
what's going on is
Yeah, I'm being
they
profiled. Yeah,
you're
yeah, I'm
being
being
profiled.
profiled. Yeah, so I kind of like, whatever. This is not. I paid for this gum. I tell her, and I walk off, and I go to my gate, and I sit down for a while, and then at a corner of my eye, I see three armed security or cops, airport police, giant guns, and they're walking in a row. So like, when you look for someone in a field, like you're looking for a missing
Yes,
person. Yeah,
yes.
so they're walking towards me to make sure, I guess, I don't run away, and they come up to me and then they demand to search my bag, my personal bag, and I'm like, no,
For
you
a
can't.
packet, like for one thing,
Yeah.
they're looking for an extra pack of gum.
Yeah.
And that itself is ridiculous.
Yep.
That they had such a massive response is blowing my mind.
I maybe the airport doesn't mess around, I don't know, but it's such a weird, and it's also like a she said, he said, she said kind of deal. Like, it's like, you can't, he paid for something. But anyway, I wouldn't let them search. One cop was really rude. He told me, I'm like, I know what this is. This is profiling. He says, we don't have that here and whatever. And then eventually I show them the money I have. It's like, and the receipt. I'm like, I have all this money, and because I just got paid from a show, and I have this receipt. Why would I steal gum? And eventually
Mhm.
they were threatened. They were threatening me with not going on the plane. They were like, we're gonna pull you off the plane. You're not gonna catch your flight. And then eventually they're like, okay, just don't bother that woman. And they left me alone. And it was just
Don't
kind of,
bother that woman
yeah,
because you were
don't,
standing looking at a rack of gum for too
exactly.
long, as far as, and
Yeah.
that bothered her. Like, this is
Yeah.
the thing. Like, I think for people like me, who, even if I'm not totally white, I look
Yeah.
white,
Yeah.
pass for white. I can't even imagine that if I was standing looking at like a rack of gum for a long time, someone would
Mhm.
ask me if I was okay. They would
Yeah.
not assume I was doing something terrible. And this is,
Exactly.
I think, the disconnect that most Canadians have, is because our experience of other Canadians is generally kindness. We can't imagine, we just can't imagine such a diametrically opposite experience routinely.
I see. I live in a different world because, like, you have your orange shirt on, and that's the world I live in. Where I'm like, oh, we built our country on that, and this is in our blood, and this is what it is. Hey, like, I just read this book called Racecraft, which was interesting. It was about the idea of race and how it's not real. It's like witchcraft. What is real is racism.
Mhm,
So
that's right.
and it's just the maintenance of racism. So it's
Yeah.
a division. And so just I when I was doing my show, I talked about the story at the end. I was just basically like, this is a person who needs me to be this
That's right.
persona.
Well, it's to maintain the cast. I don't know if you've
Right.
read Cast, but
No, I have. Yeah.
oh yeah, when I read that,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God. It's
Yeah.
because even if they are at the bottom rung, they're above you.
They're still above us. Yeah, exactly. They're still above. And that's basically it. It's I look at people like that, like robots now. Like it's just
Mm,
you have this programming
yeah.
that you haven't come up with. That no,
No,
that you just
that's right.
floating through the world.
That's right.
Not
With
that I
all of
forgive her.
these unexamined assumptions that they
Yes.
never question, even if, and if you bring it to their attention, that is very destabilizing and threatening, and they don't like you.
No.
I
Yeah.
mean, lots of people don't like talking to me
Yeah.
because I will bring these things up.
I'm the
Yeah.
same. The same. And it's just factually. Like it's just factually. And then yeah. So someone like that, I don't really get like I was at the moment very angry because I was so embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not mad at them because I'm like I feel sorry for that, which is weird. Like I don't because I said
You're
my
sad about it. You're sad.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Like it's like, oh, this it's kind of claustrophobic. This is gonna sound depressing, but it just is like it feels like it's so the people that want us at each other's throat are doing a great job.
Yes.
They're doing an amazing job, and it's just yeah. What do you
Yeah.
do?
Well, recognizing that it's in the fabric, and even perhaps even in our like felt sense, like our body sense, when I think
Hmm.
about, I read some other book, why the US is so strangely religious,
Hmm.
and yet so modern. It's because it was populated by these Puritans. They have beliefs that they don't understand, that
Yeah.
that they weren't raised with. They maybe didn't ever go to church, but they have
Yeah.
all these Puritan beliefs. And so it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
It's stuff that is so part of your society that it doesn't cross your mind to question it. So I was diagnosed late. I mean, I was a psychologist, and I essentially
Yeah.
diagnosed myself. And
You're the
how did it,
second person I met who was a psychologist who diagnosed themselves and then
yeah,
found out. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I asked my psychiatrist colleague to confirm,
Yeah.
what it's like I am drowning. And then I did this questionnaire that I had bought. I'm a neuropsychologist, so I had bought it for my assessments for other
Hmm.
people.
Hmm.
And then I did it myself because you do that, right? It's good to know what you're giving people. And I
Yeah.
scored so high, I thought, this test is no good. It doesn't discriminate very well. These are some dumb questions. I give it to my assistant who does not score high. And I was
Yeah.
like, how come you don't score high and I score high? And she's like, oh, honey, right? Like, so we had a conversation about my
Yeah.
behaviors that she had observed as a non-psychologist.
Wow.
She was nice about it. I was so shocked. I was so
Yeah.
shocked that all these things weren't normal. And even though I'm a neuropsychologist, ADHD was not a big part of my training. It's exploded, right? It was sort of
Yeah.
aggressively not talked about in adults for the longest time.
Yes.
So anyway, I got the diagnosis confirmed by my colleague and then by my family doc, and I didn't need them. I'm the expert. I didn't actually need them. It didn't change my life then. It's been a journey for me, and I'm assuming it has for you as well.
Yeah. I initially thought I had autism and I've taken
Mhm.
tests and I've scored pretty high. And it all comes from like not fitting in
Being
and
other.
not
Mhm.
being other, the forgetting things and losing things all the time. And like thinking you're lazy is one of the worst things
Yes.
to grow up as a child. Like just to think that you're just not interested. And it's
Yeah.
hard to explain to someone that that's just the way my brain is made. It's just I'm not interested. Yeah.
Yeah, you
It,
can't make yourself be interested. I mean, I was a slightly different flavor. I had a sibling who was even more neurodivergent than me. And so just my job was to not have any problems. Which was, so I'd become the perfect child, right? I have a PhD. I mean,
oh yeah.
that's how
Yeah.
you get there with
That's how you get.
ADHD.
Yeah.
But for me, the message was very much you're too much and too little at the same time.
So you must have like overexcitabilities and stuff like that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
I was extreme. I'm still very chatty, very fast talking. I mean,
Yeah.
how many people told me to slow down with my
Yeah.
talking, which I now recognize is what we would consider a soft sign for women, especially.
Yeah.
It's not in the criteria, but when I, ask people about their childhood experiences, and I try to, if I can, if they have their school records from like elementary school, the teacher comments are a gold mine of information, right?
Yeah.
If Claire would just, she's so keen and we like her, but she's really disruptive because she works fast and then she wants to talk to the other students. Like I was in detention all the time and
Yeah.
it was a straight A student. Like, isn't anybody wondering what the is going on?
You're 2E, I would imagine then.
2E?
Yeah, twice exceptional.
I'm not gifted.
Okay.
I'm just a regular smart person, but I
Okay.
work
So
hard and conscientious and
I was
yeah.
gonna say because you're getting A's because school was just the worst for me. Like it was just
But
did not
remember,
care.
perfectionistic because it's like it's your job to be good and not a problem.
Yeah.
So a smart kid's
Yeah.
gonna do that.
I was the I guess class clown.
Mm-hmm.
I question things. I'm always been like kind of that person that just kind of disrupts.
That's fascinating to me because I question everything. I was in
Mm.
trouble all the time for arguing with teachers, but
Hmm.
because I was a white girl,
Oh yes,
right?
that's yeah, yeah,
I am like spunky.
yeah,
I have a sensitive bullshit detector. Whereas you, these are words teachers said to me.
yeah.
You would have had a different response.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Just like genetically problem. Like
Oh my
just
God.
you're just a problem
You're
child. I
just a
mean, they wouldn't
problem.
say that, but it was like, yeah. I was never the leader when it was like good things, but I was always the leader when
The
things were going.
ringleader.
Yeah, the I was
Yeah.
always that person, always the bad one, always in control. So, and when you're a kid, you don't know how to read that. You just like it's just very confusing.
It's very confusing.
Yeah, it just makes you angry.
Talk about being sensitive to feeling misunderstood. I mean, it's not hard to figure out where that comes from, right?
It's been a weird 5 years, just traveling down this journey and just like now I got to forgive my parents. I gotta do this. I got to do all these type of things. But I really enjoy it. Like I really discovering myself and like just going through this. Like I feel very clear and very confident in who I am. I was
It's
really
interesting the
sorry, go
forgive
ahead.
my parents comment you made. That's an
Yeah.
interesting thing because when I did my own, not just about ADHD, just general,
Hmm.
just therapy of figuring out my whatever, I kind of realized it wasn't so much them that needed forgiveness. I think I had to forgive myself for needing them and
Yeah,
being
that's
so desperate for their approval that I would do anything, because I didn't really blame them. They didn't know ADHD was on nobody's radar in the 70s, certainly for girls, but it really
yeah.
wasn't. And because I was doing well, people are like, what is going on here? And frankly, they were so busy, with my sibling that there's just, they couldn't be curious about me. So I don't blame them for that, genuinely.
Yes.
But I've
And
also done a lot of therapy.
yeah, I mean, I haven't done a lot, but I've done I don't know if it's my fair share, but I've done a few years.
That's a
And
lot. No, for most people, that's a lot.
yeah, and I mean, my parents are immigrants, and I
Yes,
realized that coming to this country in that time, they needed to fit in, and to
that's
have
great.
a child that doesn't fit the
They were
mold,
scared, I bet, for you.
terrified,
Hmm.
terrified and they still are, right? That
Yeah.
things are going to fall apart. And really, what I realize is that they needed me to validate them. Like they needed me because of their anxiety to let them know that they're okay, that
Mhm.
I'm going to be okay. And
Yes, I know. I know.
it's
I
so,
do. It's
yeah.
awful.
So it's like, okay. I
But
mean, it's all good. It's very good.
yes,
Yeah.
but how can that be the kid's job? I know.
I,
I
I
do.
know. I
And
know. And
so, sorry, go ahead.
no, I that's where I had anger for a bit,
Hmm.
and then I'm like, kind of like, okay, I'll move on. I'll try to forgive.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Because I mean, really, we have to move on because we got here and now problems to deal with, and so
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Sorry if I'm like going off on tangents. It's just
Well, obviously, it's okay.
okay, okay. Just
So yeah, okay. So about 5 years, you. So I guess you said you were doing assessments for autism because a lot of people come to me wondering if they have autism, and autism is a pretty unique and specific set of problems.
yeah.
But more and more people are wondering about it. But it seems like you got that ruled out.
Well, my therapist said she took me down the ADHD route, so I did all those tests or whatever, and it was that. But I'm like, I'm still like, I did some Radzar and stuff like that, and I've scored pretty high. And there's like elements, I'm still not sure. Not to like, there's
Yeah.
still a part of, but I'm not, I'm not really sensitive to a lot of like textures and stuff like that. Some, but
Yes.
not
Yes.
to that degree. But yeah, so
And that is not specific to autism, because I am in
no,
fact one of those
okay,
people that cuts all the tags out of my clothes, and because I can't ignore them. If something is scratching me, I can't ignore it. So it's not going to
yes.
make me have a meltdown. It's just going to distract me all day and bother me. So I,
Okay, so I kind of like that. But I
Mhm.
also am the type of person for a long time just put up with discomfort and
Mm,
didn't realize that, oh, I'm not supposed to like or I'm not supposed to deal with that.
yes,
I could, yeah.
that's a
So,
common ADHD thing too, is
oh,
that
really?
you learn to ignore your body.
Yeah.
And so like I'm always getting injured. I don't seem to be able to walk through a doorway without hitting an edge.
Yeah.
Like I just don't have good body awareness, and my
Hmm.
proprioception, like that knowledge of where your limbs are in space, is not so
Hmm.
great. So I'm not
Yeah.
a good dancer, and I'm just not coordinated, to say the least. I think when you grow up this way, you're just always getting hurt. And so it just doesn't make sense to be paying attention to that all the time.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. That makes a lot of
So I mean,
sense.
I will literally, I have like blood on my clothes. I'm like, I'm bleeding somewhere. I should find that. And then I'm like, oh, I wonder when that happened. And then I go fix it. And I just move on with my day, unless I actually have to,
Go to the
no, I'm,
hospital.
or I do something impulsive that is not safe.
Yeah.
I'm not as reckless as I was as a kid. Like I was a hyperactive kid for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, I was very busy and like at the swimming pool, but I would, go into people's houses for tea. I lived in a very small town in Alberta when I was very small, and or like age 5 to 10. So I think I was pretty safe, but my mom had to come looking for me. Like, so, and no one thought this was weird.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's just kind of like I remember playing in like sewer tunnels and stuff like
Yes,
that, and just like this seems fine.
this seems
Like
fun. Mm-hmm.
I, I remember I was missing for 24 hours. I didn't think anything about it. Like I was hanging out, and this was in my early 20s. I just started doing comedy and I just crashed at
Mm-hmm.
someone's house
Mm-hmm.
and my parents were looking for me. And it was like
Oh,
early 20s. I just didn't think I was that kid. I was
you were
just,
that kid, yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
they
So
were probably very upset with you.
yeah, for sure. I always
Yeah,
just like,
always.
just like, oh, there's other people around that need to know I'm okay. All these types of behaviors are just,
Mm-hmm.
it's just weird to, oh, that's what that is. I didn't know. I thought that was
Yeah.
just me.
Well, it is you, but it's not unique to you, probably, or at least, your particular flavor is unique to you. And
Yeah,
especially the being black part is, I just think we're now talking about that, maybe in the last 5 years actually, but
yeah,
we just started talking about ADHD, in adults. And then we realized, okay, women are totally getting, like, they're coming to me in droves because they were missed
yeah,
and they were coping, and now they're not coping, whether it be pandemic, whether it be the generalized changes in the information flow that we're expected to consume. And so we're all feeling a little bit stressed
yeah.
and overwhelmed with attention wise. So I think all those reasons together, I have massives of people come. I have a huge wait list, people coming,
I
and there's lots of people doing assessments.
I met a woman in her 70s that got
Yeah.
diagnosed. It was like, yeah. And she was so happy.
Yes.
Like
I
she was
know. Well, because
just so happy.
and so were you happy?
Oh yeah, 100. I was so happy about it that I had imposter syndrome. So I
Mm,
was like doing all the research. I was just like, oh, please don't tell me I don't have it. Because it
yes.
just explained everything.
Explains everything.
It
Yes.
explains everything. And it was just like, there's a bit of like when you first find out, I don't know if this was you, but you feel kind of special. Like I felt kind of like, oh, I'm special. I have this different brain.
I mean,
I'm,
no, I'm a lot of, I don't know. I think there are people that think that, maybe not right away, but I definitely think, and there are some people who are like ADHD is a superpower.
I'm not into that.
Me neither. It does
Just
not feel
like,
like a superpower to me.
but there was advantages like for as being an artist there was advantages with having that and I'm learning to harness it more like to like I'm really taking in a lot of information. I'm reading way more. I figured out how to read properly with it,
Yep.
and I just take out so much information and I can use that information. I know how to connect things. I also have dyslexia, so I know
Uh,
how to connect ideas to things
that's
and
a
I
universal truth of ADHD brains, is that we see patterns and we connect ideas that other people might not connect.
exactly.
I actually made a video about it when I was learning about differences in the brains of people with
Hmm.
ADHD who have symptoms, who are showing symptoms, and people who don't have ADHD. And there's our active thinking, which is,
Hmm.
you're in the spotlight of my attention right now, and you are in my active, focused attention. Much of human experience is not that. We're just kind of daydreaming or doing something on automatic pilot. We're
Yeah.
not actually focusing, because it
Yeah.
takes a lot of actually mental energy, right, to focus. And when
Hmm.
we're not focused, our brain is working a lot. But for most people who don't have ADHD, when they focus their attention, that default network turns off. But that's not true with
Okay.
people with ADHD. Ours stays on. So that makes us more distractible by our own thoughts. But it
Yeah.
also, I think, helps us with this connecting ideas.
So
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, not that it's a superpower, it's just a different way to
It's
think
a
for me.
different way. That's
Yeah,
right.
and so I'm like, oh, this is what I was always doing. I could see patterns, and
That's right.
yeah. Oh,
And that's, I think, why we asked questions, because the teacher would be teaching something and we would remember some other thing they said that doesn't fit at all with what they're saying today. And we'd be
mhm.
like, wait a minute, you said this. And they're like, you're being difficult. I got that a lot. Don't be difficult.
Don't be difficult. They, yeah, it's I do you have a problem with root memory? Like, just like if someone, okay, for when I was a kid, learning the time was so hard for me because it's a memorization.
Okay.
I need the concept explained to me.
I do have bad geographical location. So
Yeah.
that part I have, unless I've driven it, then I
Okay.
can, if I've experienced it, like probably what you're saying. I didn't have a hard time with learning how to read a clock and do the time, but the concept of time for most of us is malleable. So
Yeah.
like our sense of time is
Yeah.
not great. And that's sort of an accepted difference, that
Yeah.
we're not good at estimating how long things take. We typically underestimate how long things will
Yeah.
take. Actually, I do quite a bit of coaching. That's one of the hugest, like, it's a big benefit to people when they can finally figure that out. Just like, you have to put more room in your schedule than you think you need.
Yeah. 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 And have alarms.
Everything
But like,
takes longer. Yeah.
yeah,
Alarms.
you need alarms, and
Endless.
yeah, like it's like for me it was the schooling system where you have to memorize facts, like
I'm terrible
memorize,
at that. I think
right.
most of us are terrible at that. History
It
was the worst.
Yes. So it's more of a narrative, less
Yeah.
linear kind of,
Yeah.
and yeah, so like the memorizing of, that's what the clock thing for me is, just
This was
like
a memorization.
memorizing, okay,
Yeah.
this number is this and this number is that, as opposed
Yeah.
to knowing what it means was, yeah.
There's a thing that it's hard to describe. So there's executive functions are involved with memory. And so
Hmm.
if we think of planning and organization as an executive function,
Hmm.
memories also need to be organized for efficient, like laying them, encoding and efficient retrieval. And that is somewhere that I definitely fall down. I can't always access my memories. So I might know something, but I don't know it at the time I
Yeah.
need to know it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was enormously frustrating for me in university.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be very hard to do, like as to get your PhD to go work
Well,
through
it's
that.
just, if you don't get the right cue, you're not, it's just not available to you. And then as soon as you walk out, you're just like, well, here it is. And now I've left the exam. And so I didn't understand that about myself. Like, so I'm sure you had that as well. There were things about you that you just didn't understand.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Or sometimes information, like I'll, because you do that drift away, you're reading a book and you start drifting, but the information sticks in my head. Like I understood what happened here. And sometimes I'm like completely lost, but sometimes it sticks in my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll be reading something. Reading was very hard because I'll just
Yes. The
drift off.
dyslexia too. Yeah.
Just drifts off to something else. And yeah, the dyslexia doesn't help either.
No,
I still wouldn't trade it, I think, for all of that.
really.
Yeah. I think
Hmm.
if I could figure out what I was younger,
Yeah.
that's what I would do, and
Yeah.
just figure out how to use those strengths.
It's funny because I could feel my perfectionism. I'm like, I would trade it.
I
If
I
I could be
guess
more perfect. And so that just shows that I'm not done therapy yet.
if you like to fit in and to be like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you're doing great though, right? Like you,
Now,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I see
in
what
my
you're saying.
50s, took a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah, same.
But you know what? If it meant I couldn't have the life I have now, then fair enough, because I do like the life I have now very much.
I think, yeah, my brain has led me the path that I'm on. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like, this is what you're gonna do, and I knew it from when I was a kid. And so
Oh
maybe,
yeah. Oh
yeah,
gosh,
oh
I
yeah,
didn't. That's good for you. The
oh yeah,
Canadian part.
yeah. I knew from like, I remember watching Bill Murray and Stripes, I believe it was. I was,
I
that
love Bill
we,
Murray.
yeah, I
He was
love Bill
the
Murray
best.
too. Yeah. So it was like, oh, I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna be that, and that was the journey.
How cool is that to
Yeah,
know that?
yeah. But it also puts blinders on. You're just
Hmm.
like, I don't care. I'm doing this. Yeah.
You know, I think that's actually can be very helpful because it helps us persist through the hard times. You know, if you
Hmm.
don't really have, I had a client who has ADHD. They wanted to be a physician,
Hmm.
and their ADHD was made like very, very smart. But with ADHD, there were some challenges, right? So they could get the grades, but had to, come in, do it another way, just like I did. Like
Yeah.
a lot of behind the scenes, racing under the water kind of stuff going on for them.
Yeah.
And applying to med school is hard in Canada. And I can't remember how many years they applied and got rejected. And after about the third year of getting rejected, I was like, what's your plan B? Tried to humor me. And then they came back, they're like, okay, I pretended to think about it, but I do not have a plan B.
Yeah.
And that's maybe what you were like.
Yeah. But like, nobody knows. Nobody knows. I know I'm, 10, but I know
Oh,
just
you
like
didn't
the,
tell.
well, I mean, you could tell what I wanted to do because,
Yeah.
I was in art classes and stuff
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that, but it was just, this is what I'm doing.
Did anybody, so there's lots of Black comedians. Did
Hmm.
anybody, was that an issue for you coming into being a comedian?
No, it actually kind of like, because Richard Pryor,
Yeah.
and then Eddie Murphy and then Sinbad and
It's
then,
not, it's sort of like there was some leadership there that you
yeah,
could
yeah,
follow.
there's
Yeah.
people I follow. But I
Yeah.
mean, they were all Americans. That was another
Yes.
problem. But
Yes.
but still, it was like, there was something there. But yeah, I followed that for most of my life. I mean, there was the Bill Murrays. I was like a student of comedy, I guess. I was like,
Yes.
that's what I studied. And
Well,
so I
and
knew
that,
everything.
yes, but
Yeah.
that's what makes you good at anything, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
People talk about natural talents bullshit that gets you started for 5 minutes, and
Yep.
everybody has to do the work.
Yeah, that's
Everybody has
right.
to do the work, and if you're not doing the work, you're not going to be good at it. And I just don't love it when people talk about natural talent or passion. Just like
Everybody
everybody has
has
to do the
talent.
work. Yeah.
Everybody in my business has talent.
Yeah,
Everyone's funny. It's yeah, that's the baseline.
that's right.
That's the
That gets you in
base
the door,
that
and
gets you
then
in the
you
door. Yeah.
you got to do the work.
You got to
So
do the work.
and so with
And
ADHD, that you figured it out. You said I taught myself to read. I would be very interested in that. How did you do
well,
that?
um, well, recently, I mean, I know how to read, but recently it was like the being able to concentrate. Meditation has helped so much,
Hmm?
like just so much.
I know.
But usually if I'm reading something I want to read, like I read a lot of comedy books. I wanted to read that. And then I have that problem where I'm like, oh, I know what's going on here and I'm done. Like I'll read a little bit, like emails are terrible for me. For
What would
comedy,
make it? What would help? Because I swear to God, clients do not read emails I send them.
I got the
Or
gist of
bullet
it.
points, one email per topic.
It probably is the visual
Yeah.
layout of it. If it was more like boom, yeah, like bullet points,
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably be like, or more graphics, it might help. But yeah, the emails are one of those where I'm like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
I got it. I've been embarrassed so many, like I was doing debaters. I've done it twice, and the first time I did it, I didn't read the emails completely. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I did a great job, but I was supposed to like hand in drafts and I
Uh,
didn't do any of that. So they must have been like, what is this person going to do? Like,
yeah, this
they
guy's
have
freaking
no,
us out. Yeah.
yeah, he must have been. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I was supposed to and coordinate with the other person. I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, I'll get it done. Don't worry. So, I mean, the embarrassment has made
Yeah.
me try to read emails
Hmm.
as much as possible.
Well, for me, one of my mantras, when I was doing my master's, my supervisor gave me, I mean, I'm sure people had given me this advice before, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Other than the just don't talk too fast. He said I need to stop to think more slowly. He said I needed to slow
Oh,
myself down. I needed
yeah.
to give myself I needed to give myself more respect and give myself more time to actually think of an answer because I'm so
Yeah.
impulsive, right? And I'm a fast thinker, so I can come up with an answer pretty quickly, but it's not going to be a good one, not necessarily.
Yeah.
And I'll never, because he told me it with kindness. I was doing my not my master's thesis defense,
Mhm.
and I did my mock one with him, and that's after that is when he gave me that feedback. Slow yourself down. And
Yeah.
so for my actual defense, I slowed myself down, and I just did great. Like I got asked a hard question, and I'm like, let me think about that for a moment. And
Yeah.
I thought about it, and I actually answered it properly, and it was great. It was all went great, and that was lucky for me because it was very rewarding. I
Mhm.
got a big dopamine hit after doing this thing that's not easy for me to do. So I think that helped. But that's the advice I give everybody now. It's like, give yourself more respect.
Yeah.
Just slow yourself down.
It's kind of like writing. Writing is like where
Mhm.
it's like just get it out. Don't be a perfectionist, and
Mhm.
then reread it.
And then
Take your
reread it.
time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Take your time. Is
And
really
don't be
that's great
precious about
advice.
it. Just
Yeah,
like, yeah,
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 yeah. That's great advice to
yeah.
slow down, slow your
He gave me
thinking
good
down.
advice. I'm
Yeah,
grateful.
that's the thing is that you're mature enough when you're doing your thesis that you could take that as not as like an insult. It's good
Well,
advice.
yeah. I mean, I think that first of all, it was his delivery. He's a very kind person, but
Yeah.
of all the things that I know about growing up with ADHD, particularly if it's undiagnosed, is you grow up in a world of criticism. Like you're always doing something wrong. The shame burden, I think, for us is quite high, maybe for everybody with neurodivergence, but because particularly if you're hyperactive, you're always doing the wrong thing. Like you're being
Hmm.
told no a lot. I think the way I learned to handle that was I stopped feeling my feelings, and it didn't really bother me that much when
Yeah.
people would say things. So it seemed like I was like, we call it ego strength. I could take criticism in without being defensive and learn from it. And I did look like that, but I think it was because I didn't feel my feelings. Because after therapy, I've had to relearn how to handle feedback like that because I feel my feelings now.
That blew my mind what you just said. I was just like, I've always been like the harsh. I grew up in a family where you're pretty much like you say the thing. You don't really hold back. There's no so I've always been like harsh and being able to take criticism and I don't care.
Yes.
But that makes sense.
Yes.
That makes so much what you just said, just like, yeah, that makes so much sense. That you just like you kind of dead in your feelings. You kind of
Yes.
just yeah.
So you're
And
welcome. And I'm sorry because
yeah.
now that you're going to want to feel your feelings, it's going to hurt.
Well, I'm again doing
Yeah.
therapy. I started feeling I'm like, oh, this is why I feel this way. And like I have a lot of anxiety. I'm on
Mhm.
pills for anxiety, and now I can take my time and understand
Yeah.
what this feeling is.
Yeah.
What it
Yeah.
means.
So anxiety and ADHD they coexist in a
Hmm.
lot of people. And sometimes it's the untreated ADHD, right?
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes the anxiety remains. It's its own problem. It's either genetically, predisposed, or it's just so well established. Yeah, I had anxiety, but for me, it was largely untreated ADHD. Once I got my ADHD under control, the anxiety about being late and forgetting things and the
Yes.
disorganization that settled down. I still have relational anxiety because of the criticism and whatever. But yeah, it's all grist for the mill when you're thinking about self improvement, I guess.
I don't know if you had this, but like the like you're talking about being late and like that kind of the anxiety also comes from like, okay, well, these are also racial
That's
stereotypes.
right.
So when you're late, it's because you're arrogant or you're lazy, or
Don't
when you do
care.
this. And it's like, yeah, so there's this double kind of
Well,
like
and
I
that's the intersection that I find is not discussed enough
yeah.
is that people have two sets of assumptions they're making about you.
Yeah, they don't assume that you could have they assume an intention,
That's
and
right.
they don't like just I think it's kind of like how they talk about and I think they do this to indigenous women in hospitals where they assume the pain tolerance is a lot more. They do it to black women in the States and
You
here
have
where
to ask
doctor
for pain medication like 20 more times than a white person if you're black. Yeah.
exactly. And I was just like it probably kind of is the same
Yep.
mentality in where it's like how could oh there's an intention to
Yes.
everything you do. You're always looking
Oh
for
my God.
some yeah.
Yes. either the intention is negative or you didn't try hard enough to stop doing something that you've been told about before, as if
That's
that would
right.
fix it.
And so like for me, going out of my house was like just after during the pandemic, and then after, it was just crazy. Like it was so hard to go outside because of anxiety, and like my brain catches patterns. And so it is constant pattern. It's constant, I'll see like a family walking down the street taking up the entire sidewalk, and
Yes.
I can go right back to like colonialism. I can I just do that all the time. So I have to calm that down
Mm-hmm.
to survive. And so I could see a lot of racism where maybe it wasn't there.
Well, not
This
intentionally there.
exactly, it's not intentionally. I could just see it in the system, but it's also, it might not be, it could be something else. So you're constantly, like I said, hyper vigilant in that, in your world. And I needed to calm that down.
You do need to calm it down, but I mean, I guess having read Cast and really thought about these unexamined beliefs and biases, I think it
Hmm.
probably is there, but it's so deep that they have no idea, and it's so deep in you as well that you even doubt it.
Well, that's what helped therapy help, was that
Mhm.
it was, yes, exactly. It's so deep. Like I'm soaking in it, and it gave me empathy, like to understand that, like, oh, they're trapped just like me.
That's right.
So we're all kind of just like
Yeah.
going through this thing. And
Yeah.
so it helped me have, as opposed to feeling like I'm the odd one out, it
Yes.
was like, oh no, I do things like them too. And I
Yes.
do that. And I might be a little bit more aware than some people, but I'm also trapped in a lot of things too. There's a lot of blind spots.
Yeah.
It's natural. And so I was like, I started having more empathy for people. And I mean, I still get upset with people sometimes, like when people park on sidewalks and stuff. I'm one I'm one of those people that get upset, but for the most part, I'm like, yeah, I the therapy has helped
Yeah.
have more empathy.
There's an expectation that I'll have it together.
Yeah.
And I don't always, and I'll misread the instructions, or forget an important part, and or I'm chairing a meeting and I'm my impatience and I'm just like not being sensitive, or I'm not listening,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes it's jarring for people because they're just like, what's happening? And then I have to apologize and remind them. And it's like, it's not an excuse. I'm not ever going to use it as an excuse, but it is an explanation.
Yep.
I did that because it was 9 o'clock at night and I had no ability to inhibit myself anymore. And you were being annoying.
Yeah. Yep.
So I
Yep.
should have left the meeting and I didn't.
I I've been in those situations
Yeah.
too. And but at least you can be I when I do stand up, I talk to the crowd a lot.
Yeah.
And I work for a club who does not like it. And the last time I talked to him was a great talk. He used to bug me all the time, used to get mad at me. And then the last time I talked to him, and I was like, he's like, oh, you're not really doing crowd work. You just like kind of like need to ask people stuff. I'm like, it's the ADHD. I need to I can't help it.
Right.
I'm in a moment and my
That's
brain
right.
just goes, what's going here? What's going there? I
Yes.
hear everything. I see
Yes. I
everything. And
bet
I
you
just,
do. So
oh yeah,
distracting.
everything. Yeah, I hear everything. So then you're not being an a-hole. You're not just ignoring
Reacting.
me. Yeah, you're
Mhm.
just
You're not
reacting.
just ignoring me. And I'm glad you shared that with him and with
Yeah,
me today,
yeah.
because to me, that's the important thing, is that people will, with my clients, I call it controlling the narrative. People will tell a story about us
Hmm.
that is wrong. And
Hmm.
so sometimes we have to get ahead of it and we
Yeah,
have to help them understand what could happen with us, even if it doesn't, if it does happen, this is what's happening, not some other
yep,
explanation. I
that's
currently
right.
have a job where I work with people who are visually impaired, and they have a
Hmm.
huge problem with people making assumptions about them.
Yeah,
For like, sometimes they're ableist and sometimes they are pitying, and so they're like
yeah,
not, they can't do anything, right? And so it's like it goes both ways. And so it's like, yeah, it's just I'm always encouraging them to take charge of the information and control the narrative that's being said about them.
yeah.
I'm getting better at just saying, I'm really sorry. I don't, I know you guys know this about me, but my medication ran out hours ago and I just can't stay. I got nothing.
I And I would imagine in your position, people like, because you're
Yeah.
on top of a lot of things, yeah, that they
Well, and
expect.
we're psychologists, so
Yeah.
presumably you would think that they would have some empathy for me. Knowledge is not enough.
No, it's not. I mean, I'm in an industry where probably tons of me.
I
Like,
think so.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's tons of us on
Yeah.
one level or another. But yeah, it's still, yeah,
Yeah.
it's still difficult.
Yeah.
People expect you to be like
They do. They do.
yeah, to be more professional, I guess is the
They
best
want
way
they
to
and
put
they
it.
expect us to make their lives easier.
Yeah,
And if we make their lives harder, they punish us. We live with it, and we all figure out our own path.
that's
I'm
right.
really happy for you
Yeah,
that
thank you.
the journey for you has been mostly positive and really helped you understand. It certainly did me, like later, not at first, because I don't think I really processed it at first because no one was
Hmm.
talking about it. It was like early 2000s for me. But
Okay.
for me, there was a lot of grief, actually. When you said I had to forgive my parents, for me, there was a lot of grief. I was
Yeah.
angry, but I was also deeply sad that my life was so much harder than it needed to be.
Yeah.
There's so many things that were ridiculously hard, and I was like Sisyphean task of getting a degree, and it just didn't need to be that way. And
No.
so I had to let that go, that sadness go.
And you also finding out in the early 2000s, there was no like you said, I'm surrounded by TikTok and
Yeah, there
videos
was
and like
nothing.
this.
When
Yeah.
I started doing more ADHD assessments and offering coaching, I was alone in BC. Like I was like asking my colleagues, what do you think about this? And they're just like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, you should do that. Nobody's doing it.
Yeah.
And that was in like 2018, maybe 2019. So it's
Yeah.
really a recent phenomenon that we're all talking about it.
COVID.
COVID.
Yeah, COVID slowed everyone down for a moment.
It really did.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
It
then
just,
we all, but for people with ADHD, our external structures were all removed, and I think a lot of people broke in half.
yeah. Yes.
They think
Yeah.
they realized that actually going to work and having people walk by their desk helped them stay at work, like helped them stay focused. And so
Really.
working at home, yeah, some people loved the working at home, and they actually
Hmm.
felt like it leveled the playing field a little bit for people with
Hmm.
disabilities, for example. They're just like, now everybody understands like just some of the challenges that I face all the time. So there was that. But I think lots of people that I spoke to they needed more input. They couldn't just work at home. They would just do nothing.
Hmm.
And they weren't getting their work done, and they were stressing about that. And so they needed to go back a little bit, or so it would be like much more check-ins with their employer, like with their employer or their supervisor. That would be the intervention. It's like, okay, you actually need structure. You need
Yeah.
scheduled check-ins. You need to have much more feedback about where you are because we're not having as many meetings. And it was just interesting how people with ADHD had to adapt.
Capitalism sucks. It just sucks. Because I laugh because that's my life, right? Like
Yes.
I'm independent, so a lot of my time is like forcing myself to get to write, and then
Mhm.
like I wrote like 2 jokes today. That's the best day ever. It's just like there's a lot of that, and so I understand what those people are going through, and it's
Yeah, and yes, writers are only writers when they're writing.
yeah, that's right.
So if you're going to call yourself a writer, you better be writing.
You got to be writing, and so
Yeah.
but to have that discipline and to be like,
Mhm.
but you also have to know what you're going to say and like
Yep.
think about the thing. And yeah, so I mean, and but when you have a job, you have deadlines and you have to hit those deadlines, and when you have no structure around you,
Yeah.
that
I think,
sucks.
I mean, ADHD, because of my personality, and probably the perfectionism plays into this and the conscientiousness, I actually really like structure and I thrive in it. So everybody with ADHD thrives with structure, but not everybody likes it. And so, people can chafe against it. And so it's like, that having a schedule helps you, but you still hate it and you won't do it. Whereas I know it in my bones and I will do it. Like if I have said I'm going to work on something, I'll work on it. It might only be for a short little mental sprint of 15 minutes if I really can't get into it, but I will do those 15 minutes because
Yeah.
that's part of my structure.
Yeah, it's hard for me to create my own structure, but if you were like, I need this thing, I could do that. Like I could.
Yeah.
That was part of coding for me, was that I
Yes.
needed someone to say, hey, build this thing
Yeah.
at this time. That
Yeah.
would be the best.
But you could get an accountability partner or coach for that. There are
Yeah.
certainly people who provide that kind of support, because really what they're doing is they're just helping you stay on track with your own goals. You know your goals. You just need accountability. There's support groups and there's groups, people would do that for each other, because
Interesting.
that just took a minute to say what we do. I mean, we have online coaching, and once you're in the online coaching, you're part of our community. And so within that, I just did it yesterday, actually, within our community, we'll offer like body doubling. And so
Oh
when I
yeah.
was doing my weekly plan, because my house of cards had fallen down in the last couple of weeks because I had been looking after my parent, and yeah, the wheels came off for sure. And so I
Yeah.
needed to get back to my structure.
Hmm.
And so yesterday I did my planning for the week, because I had not done it for weeks, and you could tell. And so I put a little Zoom link in our community saying, anytime from 9 to 11, I'm going to be in there. I'm not sure quite when, but I'll be in there. And so if you want to join me, I'll be there. But what I know is that it made me join because I said it to
Yeah.
them. And so that public commitment really helped me. And
Yeah.
so I thanked them. Whether or not they showed up, those that expressed interest helped me, in fact, get it done. And that's how accountability can really help.
You've given me ideas for
Oh,
myself.
good.
Yeah, you've
Yeah.
given me ideas for myself. That's
That's
great.
awesome.
I never thought about it like that. It's like,
Well, and
okay.
the time change might be a bit tricky, but we have someone in the hub from Nigeria. Like
Oh,
we have people from all over who they're looking for ADHD support, and they're just like, where do we go? And we're just
yeah.
like, come to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, Gavin, this has been such a
Yeah,
pleasure.
it's been great.
Maybe one day we'll meet in person. I really appreciate you talking to me,
And
and
thanks for having me.
my pleasure. Maybe our paths will cross again sometime.
Yeah. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.